Hare Krishna, welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Sing Jaya Radha Madhava first. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
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 Jaya Gopinath Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopinath Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopinath Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopinath Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Yasodanandana Praja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Praja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Jaya Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srimad Prabhupada ki. So we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 5, entitled Narada Muni cursed by Prajapati Daksha. And here today we are covering two verses, 29 and 30. 29 doesn't have a purport, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tadujaya Mudiraye.
Tadotraya Mudiraye.
Nashtaprayesu Bhadreshu.
Nashtaprayeshvabhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavatyuttama Shloke.
Bhagavatyuttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
So I just read the Sanskrit and translation of the text 29. Ititam api Rajendra prachasargadiyo munihi upetya narada praha vachah kutani purvavat. Translation: O King Pariksit, Narada Muni approached the sons of Prajapati Daksha, who were engaged in tapasya and to beget children, and spoke enigmatic words to them, just as he had spoken to their elder brothers. Responsibly, text number 30. Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Rakshayana samshrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Garato nigamam mama.
Garato nigamam mama.
Garato nigamam mama.
Garato nigamam mama.
Anvichatalu paravim.
Anvichakanu padavim.
Anvichatanu paravim.
Anvichakanu padavim.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Dakshayana samsrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Garato nigamam mama.
Garato nigamam mama.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Karato nigamam mama.
Garato nigamam mama.
Anvichatanu paravim.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Next please.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Gadato nigamam mama.
Gadato nigamam mama.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Bratrinam pratrivatsala.
Pratrinam pratrivatsala.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Dakshayana samshrinuta.
Gadato nigamam mama.
Gadato nigamam mama.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Anvichatanu padavim.
Bratrinam vatsala.
Bratrinam pratrivatsala.
Dakshayana samshrinuta
Dakshayana samshrinuta
Gadato nikamam
Gadato
nikamam mama Anvichhatanu padavim
Vichhatam padari
Ratrina Ratrivachalaha
Ratrina
Ratrivatsalaha
Dakshayana samshrinuta
Dakshayana samshrinuta
Gadato nigamamama
Gadato nigamam mama
Amvichchatam padavi
Anvichatan padavi
Yatyanam ratrivatsala
Bhradrinam Bhradrivatsala
Word for word, Dakshayanaha.
Dakshayana
O sons of Prajapati Daksha,
O sons of Prajapati Daksha
Samsrinuta,
Samshrinuta
please hear with attention.
Please hear with attention
Gadataha,
Gadaha
who am speaking.
Who am speaking
Nigamam,
Nigama
instruction.
Instruction
Mama,
Mama
my.
Mama
Anvichata,
Vichhata
follow.
Follow
Anuparavim,
Anupavim
the path. Pratrinam,
Pradrinam
of your brothers.
of your brothers
Pratrivatsalaha,
Bhradrivatsala
all you who are very much affectionate to your brothers.
O you who are very much affectionate to your brothers
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O sons of Daksha, please hear my words of instruction attentively. You are all very affectionate to your elder brothers, the Haryashvas. Therefore, you should follow their path. Purport. Narada Muni encouraged Prajapati Daksha's second group of sons by awakening their natural affinity for their brothers. He urged them to follow their older brothers if they were at all affectionate toward them. Family affection is very strong, and therefore Narada Muni followed this tactic of reminding them of their family relationship with the Haryashvas. Generally, the word Nigama refers to the Vedas, but here Nigama refers to the instructions contained in the Vedas. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. The Vedic instructions are like a tree of which Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit. Narada Muni is engaged in distributing this fruit, and therefore he instructed Vyasadeva to write this Mahapurana, Srimad Bhagavatam, for the benefit of ignorant human society. Anarthopasam sakshat bhakti yogam adhoksache lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relationship to the Supreme Truth. Bhagavatam 176. People are suffering because of ignorance and are following a wrong path for happiness. This is called anartha. These material activities will never make them happy, and therefore Narada instructed Vyasadeva to record the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva actually followed Narada and did this. Srimad Bhagavatam is the supreme instruction of the Vedas. Kalitam Phalam, the ripened fruit of the Vedas, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Dakshayana samsrinuta garato nigamam mama anvichatan paravim pratrinam pratrivatsalaha. O sons of Daksha, please hear my words of instruction attentively. You are all very affectionate to your elder brothers, the Haryashvas. Therefore, you should follow their path. Om Agyanatimirandasya Kenanjana Savakaya Chaksuram Vinitam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pamulam Hate Kirim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Diyanataranam Paramanandam Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So I beg the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas, both here in the temple room as well as there in the internet world, so that I could speak from Srimad Bhagavatam truthfully, beneficially, and pleasingly, especially for my own purification. Hare Krishna. So Narada Muni liberated the Haryashvas, the 10,000 sons of Prajapati Daksha, and so they missed their original duty as create progeny in the material world and went back to Godhead. And now Daksha has sent 1,000 more sons, the Savalasvas, and they are also performing great austerity, like in the previous verses we were reading. They were drinking only water and eating only air. So practically, they were like today. Even today, we have such people which are called breatharians. They might just take energy from the sun and live by only air. And sometimes, because of social relationships, they might drink a cup of water. But otherwise, they are amazingly maintaining themselves without eating. But Prabhupada in the previous verses said that this is not very practical in this day and age. So instead, Prabhupada mentioned some easier forms of austerities, like the four regulative principles, which we are uh, promising to our spiritual master at the initiation. So that and chanting of Hare Krishna mantra for minimum 16 rounds, that is sufficient. So, so these Savalasvas, they also have in mind that they need to fulfill their father's desire by creating progeny. But lo and behold, Narada Muni, the terrible agent of Yoga Maya, creeps in and turns their head also. And he is using very manipulative, cruel tactic, as Prabhupada mentions here, uh, about family relationships. They are very strong. Uh, who is a younger brother or sister here? I'm a younger brother in the family. So, so there is some affection towards the elder brother, and the elder brother is considered like a little bit of an authority, you know. And so there's whatever the elder brother does is good, and the younger brother is following. So Narada Muni is using this family affection and tells them like a very boldly how they are actually feeling, and or how they are supposed to be feeling towards their elder brothers. Like in Finnish, we have a saying that what the big ones ahead, the small ones follow. And also in Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, Yad Yad Acharibhyesh Reshtas Tattat Evetarochana Sayat Pranamam Kuruta Lokastat Anuvardate. That whatever action the great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So that is very natural. Well, today's world, like we had just recently had a government election here in Finland, and there's some little bit ill behavior in some of the government people. So this has been a little bit on the surface in the news that people in general are not very satisfied, and they demand some corrections there in the government level. That correction is also happening. Like there's some uh, like a racist statements from the government people. So mm, so there has been lots of uh, mm, like people are not satisfied with this racist idea, so they are working on it in the government level now. And the affection by the Savalasvas towards the Haryasvas, that is also um, the similar situation is there in the childhood pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Uh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was originally called Vishwambar, and he had an elder brother called Vishwarupa. And, and they were both very elevated, even though they were just young. Well, Vishwarupa was so much older that when Vishwambar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, little Nimai was just playing with his friends. And you know, in Indian villages, they usually roam around naked with some little jewels here and there. So at that time, Vishwarupa was already older, and he was going to the house of Advaita Acharya to learn about the Shastras. Advaita Acharya was the like a main guru of the area, main spiritual master. Uh, and Vishwarupa was very much attached to this kind of holy life, getting spiritual instructions, reading the Shastra. And at one point, it became his turn to explain what he had learned. And he gave such an explanation about the conclusion of the Vedas, that it is to perform loving devotional service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. That even Advaita Acharya himself, he was performing deity worship at the time. So he was simply hearing this Vishwarupa's recitation, and he stopped his deity worship. He came from the altar. He came to hug Vishwarupa. He was so pleased with Vishwarupa's explanation, and all the other students, they were very much attached to Vishwarupa also, and they commented that they never want Vishwarupa to leave this place. His explanation was so golden, and Vishwarupa also, he had like similar affection to these other students and Advaita Acharya, that he said also that I never want to leave this association. And of course, there was some comparison of surrounding worldly people, like we know from that history. Advaita Acharya earlier had been really concerned about the state of affairs in Navadvip that time. It was supposed to be like educational center, but all the education was simply about mundane topics. So he was loudly crying for the Supreme Lord to appear. And at this point, when Vishwarupa was there, it already seemed to have borne some fruit. So, so then when Vishwambar, little Nimai, was just a kid, he was just at home at that time. And then his mother, or their mother, Sachimata, told Vishwambara that go to Advaitacharya's house and call Vishwarupa home. It's time for lunch. So little Nimai went, and everybody saw him. Advaitacharya also saw him that there's something special in this little boy, but he didn't know what it was. So their Vishwarupa's and Vishwambara's relationship seemed to be very uh, affectionate, very special. So Vishwambar called Vishwarupa home for lunch, and Vishwambar then grabbed the dhoti of little Vishwambara, and then they went. So, yeah. So their relationship was very cute. And even at home, Vishwarupa was never really interested in any other mundane affairs at the house. He was spending most of his time in the temple room of the house, just chanting and reading Shastra and whatnot. But then he came to hear about his parents, Jagannath Mishra and Satsimata Mata's talks with each other, that we should get Vishwarupa married. And this was like a very strong alarm bell in Vishwarupa's mind. No way, I would have to waste my life in marriage situation and confront so many worldly people. I cannot see their face. I'm out of here. I'm going to the forest. So all of a sudden, Vishwarupa just left. He just left, and everybody who had been attached to him, his parents, even little Nimai, Vishwambar, they were crying. All the students at Advaitacharya's place, they were crying. The whole village were practically crying. uh, but then some village neighbors, friends came to pacify Jagannath Mishra. Um, that anyway, if your son is such a great devotee, so you should be happy that he has chosen this kind of path that is only auspicious. Then gradually, for after some days, Jagannath Mishra became sober again, and then um, then Jagannath Mishra had an idea that the same thing might happen to our little Vishwambar. So he was very much concerned. Vishwambar already had started school at that time and started to learn different shastras like Nyaya, logic was his favorite. And he was also going to Advaita Acharya's house to learn more about the scriptures. So Jagannath Mishra became a little bit concerned that Nimai might leave also. So we stopped his studies, we interrupt his studies. He cannot go to school anymore. So let him remain a fool. But Satsimata was actually opposing this, that if we are going to get Vishwambar married, how will anybody marry any foolish person? So we must educate him. So then Jagannath Mirza gave a very strong counter opinion. No, because the Supreme Lord will take care of everybody. So there's no harm at all to get to interrupt Vishwambar's schooling. Uh, so they stopped Vishwambar's education, and Vishwambar didn't go to school anymore. And he was just staying at home, um, And so he was getting a little bit bored. Then, of course, he became a little bit naughty. He started his mischievous activities again. Mm. Uh, uh, he would sometimes lock people in their houses. So, I mean, traditionally, a Vedic house would be like the toilet or the washroom would be outside the house. They don't keep inside the house. So they would lock people inside the house, so they wouldn't be able to go and pass their urine and stool. And they were so this kind of mischievous acts he was performing. And then on one day he saw a pile of dirty pots. Well, dirty and dirty. They had been used for making offerings to Lord Vishnu. So he saw this pile of rejected pots and he sat on them. And his friends went to tell Sachimata. And Sachimata came to the place that Vishwambara said that Vishwambara, you must come down at once. This is rejected pots. They are dirty, considered dirty. So you need to step out of there and take a bath. But then Nimai Vishwambar, he was giving so many counter arguments. Oh, see, I'm not educated. I don't know the difference, what is clean, what is pure. And besides, these were used for the purpose of making an offering to Lord Vishnu. So they must be pure. So there's no harm. I'm just sitting here. He was sitting there like sitting on a throne, and he was showing his proud mood that he was doing like that. And finally, Sachimata was able to pull him out from the top of the pots, and they both went to bathe in the Ganga before Jagannath Mishra comes. And and in this way, Jagannath Mishra was a little bit concerned now, and also his neighborhood friends, they were encouraging him that let Nimai go to school. It's good for children to have education, and because many of the parents, they are eager to have their children educated, so you should let him study. And also, I remember Chanakya Pandit saying something similar, that son is an enemy in the house if he is either not educated or he's not a devotee, or maybe there was some third condition also, but I forgot for that. If somebody remembers, you can remind me. But either be educated or maybe become wealthy, do a lot of work, become wealthy, and, or become a devotee of the Lord. So Prabhupada mentions here about the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, it is the very third verse, 113. Nigama kalpataror kalitam phalam sukhamukhad amrita dravasam yutam pivata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhur aho rasika bhuvi pavakaha. The translation goes, O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanates from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a ripened fruit of a tree of the Vedas. Sometimes it's compared like a mango. and Shukadev Goswami is Radharani's parrot originally. So it is said if a parrot puts his beak in the fruit and eats a little, then then that fruit becomes even more sweet, more tasty. So within these great personalities, recitation here to these great personalities, recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Not only Sukadev Goswami, but Srila Prabhupada also. What would we do without his purports to these texts? So we need these Acharya's explanations of these verses and their example also. Acharya means living by example. To make us inspired to follow these scriptures. And it is also described how when you pick a mango, uh, some of the mango trees might be quite high, and some of the mangoes would be quite on the top of the tree. So when you pick a mango, you don't just throw it in the ground, otherwise it will easily be smashed. So you need a chain of people. You hand down the mango for the next people under you, and so in this way the mango remains as a whole fruit and doesn't become distorted. So in the same way, Vedas are handed down by the disciplic succession, so that there is no other unnecessary concoctions about the Shastras. So it is basically recommended to start reading Srimad Bhagavatam from the beginning, from the first and second canto up to the end of the Bhagavatam. But because of Srila Prabhupada's purpose, we can actually relish Srimad Bhagavatam in any place. From any canto. So first and second cantos are considered as the two lotus feet of Krishna, and the 10th canto is the bright face of Lord Krishna. And so Srimad Bhagavatam in the same way is like a Lord Krishna's body. And in the previously quoted verse, it is said that the juice of Srimad Bhagavatam is relishable for all, including liberated souls. Now, there's a famous verse about devotional service of topics of Krishna, how they are attracting to everybody, even those who are liberated. Very famous verse, Atmaramas Chamunayo Nirkranta Apurukrame Kurvantya Haitukim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Guno Hari. So this is Sutta Goswami who is saying to the sages of Naimisharanya, all different varieties of Atmaramas, or those who take pleasure from Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Sisi Punitai. So Srimad Bhagavatam is also non-different from the Lord Himself. So Srimad Bhagavatam can be relished even by liberated souls. Liberated soul conscious of those who are not attached to this material world. Material world doesn't interest in them. But that's not also enough. There should be attraction to the Supreme Lord also. Like those who merge in the existence of Brahman, they are also called the liberated souls. But since they usually don't have the needed attraction to the Supreme Lord, and after being some time in that uh, impersonal state of existence, they desire something else because they are individuals and they cannot give up their desire. So their desire goes to the material world. That's the only place they can be focused on. So therefore, we need to be attached to the Supreme Lord and His devotional service in order to get the actual final liberation. So Srimad Bhagavatam and devotional service serve this kind of purpose. And this verse, Atmaramascha Munaya, that's very important. It's also being discussed later on by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the famous 64 explanations to this Atmarama verse that's recorded in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now that's interesting that Prabhupada is quoting this verse from Bhagavatam 176. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature. This verse is by, I think, Sutta Goswami, again, to the sages of Naimisaranya, I forgot. But it's in a chapter where Ashwatthama, the son of Drona, is being punished. There's a discussion between the sages before the actual story begins. So this verse is from there. But this is actually a similar verse to the famous second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then there are some other verses which are glorifying in Srimad Bhagavatam also. Like the second verse, Dharma Prauchikata Kaita Lutra Paramo Nirmacharanam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivaram Tapa Trayan Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parayarishvara Sanyo Ridya Varudya Tetara Kritipir Sushru Supistat Ksana. So there it is said, described how Srimad Bhagavatam is rejecting all kinds of material motivated religions. And therefore it propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. And the highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion. So we should learn to look at this world according to the Shastra. There's an explanation of Shastra Chakshu, how this whole material world is simply a manifestation of Lord Krishna's energy. And we are in it, and how we are supposed to act with this energy in order to make our human life successful. And today's day and age, it is simply chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it also explains that this Bhagavatam is compiled by Vyasadeva. Also explains that in his maturity. So there in Bhagavatam. There's a chapter that describes how Vyasadeva was compiling all the Vedas, putting them in a written form, but still he wasn't very satisfied, and he was wondering why he is not satisfied, even though it's a question of the holy scriptures. Then Narada Muni comes by and instructs Vyasadeva about, or he tells that he hasn't been glorifying the Supreme Lord itself enough. So then Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam in order to correct this. So Srimad Bhagavatam in itself is sufficient for God realization. It is understood that Srimad Bhagavatam it is a natural commentary in itself to what is it? Vedanta Sutra. Yes, thank you. And whoever submissively hears the Srimad Bhagavatam, then the Lord is established in his heart. So that's about the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. And even so, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he was studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Vishwarupa was studying Srimad Bhagavatam, as we hear from this. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a lot of quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam also. So there's a statement by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that the three most important books, they are Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So out of the three, if you would have to choose two of them, that would be Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if you would have to choose only one of them, then that would be Chaitanya Charitamrita. Because it already contains lots of quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam. And it practically explains how Srimad Bhagavatam can be applied in this day and age. And then there's one more glorification verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1:343. Kshine svathamopagate dharmakyanadibhi saha kalamnasti drisam esa puranarko dunoditaha. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Tarantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I can end there. If there are any questions or comments, I can try to answer.
How beginners devotees can enjoy Srimad Bhagavatam if senses are dirty?
Well, if senses are dirty, how
How
can
you can enjoy Srimad Bhagavatam?
Well, it's a gradual purification process, so one should be sincere. Originally, we have to have faith. I mean, that's also the 9 processes of devotional progress, progress in devotional life. Actually, Prabhupada mentions this. He even mentions here the word anartha somewhere. People are suffering because of ignorance and following the wrong path for happiness. So they are trying to take happiness from the material world, and that makes them dirty. And this is called anartha. So, I mean, one who is sincerely trying to make a progress, understanding his difficult condition, dirty, dirty condition in the material world, and is submissively trying to understand both book Bhagavatam and person Bhagavatam, then gradually the natural result is that he is getting purified. First, there is a shraddha, like a beginner's faith. Then sadhusanga, he is taking association of devotees who are on this path. Then his bhajana kriya, he's taking initiation from a spiritual master. And then comes anatta nivritti. So it's a gradual process. If you just sincerely want to make progress, then the opportunity is there. And these books are not that you just read them once and that's it. But you keep on reading and reading them because you will get more and more realization, deeper realizations from them. And that's a evidence, kind of evidence that you are getting purified, and Krishna is helping you by revealing you more and more, tasting more sweetness in the Bhagavatam, in the ripened fruit of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Very clear question.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? And we can end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Yeah.